Hi, this is Bharti, and we are here at Spinnaker Summit in San Diego. And today we have with us Gopal Dommety, your founder and CEO of OpsMx. First of all, welcome to the show. So this is the first day of the conference, and you have also delivered a keynote. Tell us a bit about what were the core highlights of your keynote today.
My keynote is about how can Spinnaker become ubiquitous. Spinnaker, for the last 4 years, has picked up momentum, has now almost 10,000 people community. And so I'm taking this step today to project and saying, okay, how can we be a 50,000 people community? How can we be, 20, 30,000 companies adopting Spinnaker? So then I said, in the keynote, I analyzed the internet growth, what fueled internet to go from 40 million users to 15, 20 billion users today, or devices today. And even Spinnaker is today almost at a 30 to 40 million deployments a year, and then projecting that it could go to 200 billion deployments a year. And what are the things we need to do to get to that point? That's what my keynote is about. And what I said is that the Spinnaker platform has to be scalable, has to be simple, and also safe. And once you do those three things, then you get to a critical mass of adoption.
I will come to the point of, first of all, this growth of adoption of Kubernetes later. But before that, I'm actually curious why and when you created the company, what opportunities or problem you saw in the market that you wanted to solve.
3 years ago, I met Adrian Cockcroft. I and Adrian were talking about a lot of different things. And one of the things we both had, Adrian is actually a Netflix chief architect. And one of the things that I was very fascinated about is how do you deliver software? And at that time, Spinnaker was just being open sourced. When it was being open sourced, I saw the potential of Spinnaker, but what was very interesting to me is if you want to continuously deliver software, you also need to continuously verify software. And so I saw Spinnaker and I said, okay, if we augment Spinnaker with a continuous verification using machine learning, then you can achieve that dream of completely automating software delivery. And that I knew was a big opportunity, especially because I understood that there are 15 billion devices out there and they all need to get updated. And the other portion is that Kubernetes was just gaining momentum. And if Kubernetes is declarative infrastructure, you need a declarative application delivery. And so those two trends told me that this is going to be something big. And that's how we started OpsMx.
Right. And how involved are you with the Kubernetes or Spinnaker? These days, we cannot even separate the two. So how involved are you with the Spinnaker community?
Yeah, so OpsMx is very involved with the Spinnaker community. And we are a big part of the community. We have 19 contributors into the Spinnaker community. To put that into context, we are the third largest in contributors in number, only after Google and Netflix. And we have made over 600 contributions. We have one of the early Netflix Spinnaker team members join us, Michael Graf. He's also one of the SIG special interest groups. He leads that group. So we are not just that, we have open sourced several of the components. One is Terraform. We have basically open sourced a Terraform stage. We also have Spinnaker working on Red Hat RHEL. So essentially it's a certified Spinnaker that we also open source. So apart from the contributions, the open source open sourcing several bigger modules, we provide Slack support. That means in the Spinnaker Slack channel, our team goes and participates in helping potential users of Spinnaker get onboarded. So these are the three things that we do, and the overall community leadership we participate in. So we're fairly involved with the Spinnaker community.
Right. Spinnaker evolved, at Netflix to solve their own problem, but now it's used widely. Typically, what happens with open source projects, you either build or you can buy. But you come in a place where you enable customers to, use it without having to invest their own, developer resources, because not everybody can afford it.
Correct.
So there are a couple of things I want to understand from you. First of all, is that how do you take a Spinnaker and add value to it without creating a kind of, take it too far from the upstream? Okay. What value you add, and why customers, should work with you instead of taking to simplify it, why buy versus build? That's the question.
Yeah. So a very good question. OpsMx as a philosophy believe that the open source should be open source completely. So, and we put a layer of our modular services on top of open source. So the way we have architected our product is that it will have the latest open source distribution and have our secret sauce sort of on top of it. That secret sauce is what we monetize, but we also sell open source support. The reason customers come to us is either because they would like the open source support. So since we have the expertise in Spinnaker, and typically a customer would take, let's say, 3 months to onboard applications into production, we can do it in like 2 days. Versus when customer wants to go into production with Spinnaker, they would like a partner like us who gives 24/7 support, so that anything goes wrong in production, they can basically call us, which is a very high risk for any large company to take if they don't have somebody like us. Now, typically they first get onboarding support from us, they buy open source support from us, and then they start, once they see the value, they start buying the value added layer on top. And that value added layer, I can talk about it, but that's the sort of the reason why customers buy from us versus do it themselves, because it's not always easy, and we bring best practices. We have an understanding of, let's say, any finance industry, we have an understanding of regulation, how they should be able to do it. We have an understanding of what kind of app, how to take a certain kind of monolith application, deploy into production using Spinnaker, which they have to go through the learning process themselves, which takes time and also causes errors. And any errors can be basically fatal.
And if you look at any open source product, all the way from Linux kernel to whatever it is, you don't just use that open source. You have to integrate it with your services. Sometimes it could be compliance. Sometimes it could be your billing system. So
Correct.
And the open source project will not cater to those needs. You do have to work with somebody.
Correct.
So yes, so that layer makes perfect sense. Of course, open source is always usable, but you just make it, totally.
Yeah, we make
day two problems.
We make it production ready. We make it enterprise scale.
Perfect. Yep. So I know you may not be able to name all the customers, but can you just give us an example? What kind of customers are using your solutions?
Yeah. So we have customers first all across the geography. I think other than Africa. So we have from Europe, from North America, Asia, actually Latin, South America, all of the above. We have pretty much across most sectors. Like we have large financials, we have high tech, we have fintech, we have telcos, we have across at least these sectors.
Which also means these sectors
So
are
we
using.
also have government.
Which also means these sectors are using Spinnaker.
Exactly. Yes.
Perfect. I want to just go back to the evolution of Spinnaker itself. We touched upon it just very briefly. It started at Netflix, and then now it has evolved into a project which is hosted at a neutral foundation, and now everybody is kind of, and you guys want everybody to use it. I'm curious about the evolution of Spinnaker itself, from where it started, and how it's like adding more layer as more users come in. You have to solve more problems. So can you talk about that a bit?
Yes. So, I remember 3.5 years ago going to Netflix and meeting the team there, and I was thinking, wow, this is pretty cool. And the Spinnaker has come a long way since then. In fact, I think at that time there was not even Kubernetes support. So if you think about Spinnaker, it has gone through the maturity cycle beyond Netflix in the last 3 years. It has gone through, because a lot of finance companies, a lot of high-tech companies, they're all using it, and they're giving that feedback into the system. For example, its scalability has increased, and ability to deploy and use has significantly improved. And also now we have the safety, which is the Kayanta, the canary analysis. All of that was originally not in the open source. That was open source. It was recently only it's recently only came into the open source community. Yeah.
So, but when we talk about Spinnaker and Kubernetes, these are very complicated technology. These are not the easiest one to use.
It's easy. I'm just kidding.
So as you add more layers, it makes it even more complex. But then also at the same time, Kubernetes is not meant for average. It's an orchestration platform, and Spinnaker is CI/CD as well. But then you would not want it to be easy, because then that's your job. You make it easier for you. But do you also, when you look at as core part of the Kubernetes, sorry, I always keep saying Kubernetes because you're right behind you is the venue for KubeCon.
That's okay.
Yeah. So when you look at Spinnaker, what are the major concerns of the community that as you are adding this layer, as new users are coming in, it is becoming more complex? Do you care about it? Do you want to keep it simple? Do you worry about that it's losing focus or not? Or to just sum it up all, what are your major concerns about as Spinnaker is evolving?
I think, I've been involved in communities before. I think any community has to go through that cycle of scaling, wherein you get a lot of features in these various dimensions, right? And because that scaling is really coming through different customer requirements, right? And typically what happens is that scaling will actually get you to grow to a certain customer size. At that time, the new customers will come and say, I want simple. Not in terms of simple in terms of community organization, etc., or simple in terms of code base, but simple in terms of usability. And that will give you the next sort of quantum of growth. Right? So our goal is to make sure that one, the scalability happens to hit a certain target sort of number of customers, and then the next goal would be to also further simplify the usability and make it grow much further. I mean, to give you an example, when an organization starts using Spinnaker, the developers initially a couple of the developers can do onboarding themselves, but they really would need self-service onboarding, so that nobody else has to onboard them, right? There's also concepts of intent-based pipelining. So you say the intent, and it sort of creates the pipeline, right? So uh, this cycle of expansionary or scaling, where a lot of requirements come in, is a necessary part of the evolution of any open source sort of project. And I think we are excited that it's happening.
And it also keeps you guys on your toes, the more challenges come in, and that's how open source people like to solve it. The more challenges are there.
Yes. I mean, if there's no challenge, there's no fun.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, it's like human life, right? You don't have anything to push, your muscle goes away.
So no, the beauty of open source versus a proprietary company is that you have only those set of engineers, who can solve those problems. So you don't want new challenges. You want to maintain their user base. With open source, new challenges, new people can come in. New communities, will evolve, and people join from all around the globe. And I mean, nothing can beat that.
No, absolutely, absolutely. And we have a large office in India. We have some fabulous people contributing to open source from our India office. And it's a very vibrant community, and that's the beauty of open source. And that's why we built the company on Spinnaker, and then we add a layer on top of Spinnaker so that our customers can have the best of both worlds.
Before we wrap up, since you'll be at KubeCon also, I'm curious about. There's a lot of your customers. Maybe they're in different phases of their cloud native journey. Some are using Kubernetes and considering Spinnaker. Some are using Spinnaker but considering Kubernetes. So how do you see as these two technologies, working, closely to solve your customer's problem? Where do you come in? How do you help those customers? And how do you see these two technologies working together?
That's a beautiful, beautiful question. Typically, when the day 2 of Kubernetes, that means you went just production Kubernetes, is when they're really thinking, hey, how am I going to do continuous delivery onto it? Right? Sometimes what they do is they extend whatever tool they have to do 1 or 2 applications on Kubernetes, and then they say, okay, I'm not too happy with it, so let me go and look for the modern continuous delivery platform. So there is that to get the power of Kubernetes realized, you actually need a modern continuous delivery tool. Otherwise, you have a great car, but you don't know how to sort of drive it. Like a lot of our customers who use OpenShift, which is obviously built on Kubernetes, our sweet spot is day 2 of OpenShift will be where they call us. On the other dimension, when you're using Spinnaker to deploy into AWS, etc., then it's very natural for some developer to say, I want to use this Kubernetes flavor, and then you can sort of to deploy it. So it kind of works both ways, but we are obviously more interested in when the Kubernetes gets to day 2 and we get called to give our product to them.
Right. They complement each other. They're becoming
absolutely. I mean, they complement each other. They don't. Kubernetes and Spinnaker doesn't compete.
Yeah. Just in the early days of servers, we used to talk about lamp stack. So that's what it is becoming today. Also, Spinnaker, Kubernetes, Linux, and all those technologies.
Absolutely. I mean, it's basically a different parts of the stack. And exactly.
Gopal, thanks very much for taking your time and talking to us today. I'll be seeing you again at KubeCon also, and I look forward to seeing you again to see where Spinnaker is going in the next Spinnaker Summit. So once again, thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it, and I look forward to seeing you again.